Today on BRStv Reef FAQs, we're going beta, saving you money on CO2 media and making that coral growth bonus even cheaper. Hi, I'm Ryan, your host of BRStv Reef FAQs. Today we're sharing a path to saving money on CO2 media. It's called a recirculating CO2 scrubber. Note that word recirculating because that's what changes this conversation from most of the other discussions on CO2 scrubbers. Tons of reefers are using CO2 scrubbing media on their skimmers to raise the pH of their tanks. This is particularly valuable on tanks with small coral frags where you want to see faster growth and fill out the tank. Also valuable if you want to grow those frags out and trade them for other corals rather than buy new ones. The science on how corals calcify and grow faster is pretty clear, and we've already done a standard CO2 scrubber skimmer video, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We're jumping right into what a recirculating CO2 scrubber is and why I'm calling it beta. The difference here is a standard CO2 scrubber on your skimmer pulls air from the room, meaning scrubbing all the air in the entire room 24 hours a day. The fish room may be less impactful, but in a living room with doors are open to the entire house, you may be scrubbing way more air than is necessary for the desired pH outcome in the tank. That's not inherently bad, but it can just cause you to change out more media than you might like. Okay, so this is where the recirculating design comes in. We don't have to pull air from the room. You can actually put a port in the skimmer lid and draw air from there. Meaning the skimmer pump is drawing air from the CO2 scrubber. The air mixes with water to create bubbles. When the bubbles pop, the air would normally go out the ports on the top of the skimmer lid, but in this case, we're just going to feed the air back into the CO2 scrubber, essentially just scrubbing air which has already been scrubbed and nearly eliminating the skimmer as the cause of new CO2 introduction. So this is obviously a great idea, so why are we calling it beta? Well, I got this idea from a post by Velcro on Reef to Reef called the best way to implement a CO2 scrubber, and immediately thought, man, this is smart, and I wanted to try it ever since, but I haven't got around to it. This thread was actually created in 2017, and as several people have done it successfully and love it. However, for this video, I have to call it beta just because there are issues that people have run into. The team here hasn't had any personal experience with it. I do think that Velcro's approach will ultimately become pretty common when more reefers have tried it, shared their experiences, and developed approaches to avoid some of the smaller hiccups. We're actually looking to up the BRStv pH Investigates experiments with this design and share the results. So I think we can share our personal results, which I'm assuming will be possible to address the most common challenges reefers run into. There are three that I've seen. First is the recirculating design works too well and the pH gets too high. In that case, you should be able to fix that with a Y fitting and a valve to let some amount of fresh air into the mix. You could also consider some solenoids to open and close valves with a controller like an Apex, but the media savings might be outweighed by the investment in valves, which do wear out. However, you could just use the controller to shut off the skimmer when the pH is too high. The skimmer doesn't necessarily have to run 24 hours a day, and the benefits of a perfect, stable pH might actually be better than perfect skimmer performance. The second challenge is what happens when something gets into the tank which causes the skimmer to go absolutely nuts and overflow. We don't want that wet foam being sucked into the CO2 media because eventually it will dissolve and be sucked back into the skimmer and the tank. The media will skyrocket the pH and there's a dye in the media, so liquefying it and dosing the tank is a bad idea. Some potential solutions are like some foam around the inside of the lid of the cup designed to pop the bubbles before they can be sucked in. The auto-off options like the Reef Octopus Regal skimmers, which have that float that turns the pump off when the skimmer is full. You can also use a drain port which goes into a skimmate collector, many of which also turn off the skimmer when they're full. You could also use a controller like the Apex to turn the skimmer off when the pH gets too high, which is a good idea anyways. The last is if you run it long enough without maintenance, it is possible for the humidity to collect in the bottom of the scrubber. Humidity is actually good for the media performance and longevity, but we don't want so much to collect that it submerges the media. So if your media ends up lasting a really long time this way, it's possible in some instances that you might actually have to dump a small amount of water out of the canister. With the larger CO2 scrubbers, you'll obviously have to do that less frequently, and they also have a port in the bottom to drain fluids. The recirculating design here is probably one of the best ways to reliably and stably increase the pH in a more affordable manner than your standard design, with just a few caveats. However, I'd say there are 5 major methods of controlling pH, something we covered in our top 5 tips, how to raise pH in reef tanks. So if this method isn't the one for you, one of these probably is. We'll see you next Wednesday with the next batch of BRStv Reef FAQs.